So what goes on in a beehive?
What goes on in a beehive every day? They never sleep 24/7. They're always doing something. A beehive's like a superorganism, which means that they are constantly moving like an amoeba. Like, I use that analogy like an amoeba, just kind of floating around. And in the middle of that colony is a queen, and she's laying 2,000 eggs a day. And then you got nurse bees and guard bees and garbage bees and all kinds of other different bees. And what they're doing is they're helping that whole superorganism. They are working for the good of the hive. It's called division of labor. And then you got field bees going out and getting nectar and pollen coming in and regurgitating the nectar to make honey. And there's a whole organization here too. And they've been around for millions of years, so they've got it all figured out.
So what are the common products that we use today that come from?
There's seven products I teach in my class. First one's honey. Then there is, of course we know what honey is too. Then there's pollen. People eat the pollen. There is propolis, which is called bee glue, and bees collect that from trees when they bleed, and they use to protect the inside of the hive, but we can actually use a product like that to help as a medicine. Royal jelly, which is what the bees feed the babies and the queen. That's 4. And then there's bee venom, which is what people use via the medical profession. They put venom inside a syringe and you inject it into the body to help desensitize people against inflammation. And that's 5. And let's see, there's 6 is actually you can eat bees. Chocolate covered bees are one of my favorite things. You put bees in chocolate and you kind of makes a little crunchy thing instead of nuts. They'll be the bee carcasses. And there's one more, 7. I always think of them too. Wax, thank you, beeswax. That's right. Beeswax, which is of course made in candles and polishes and skateboard grinding rail. Yep.
So how often do you extract honey from a hive?
Usually twice a year, springtime and fall.
And then how much do you normally?
Anywhere in Santa Barbara has it range from 50 to 100 pounds. And it's surprising that I find that most of the big honey producers are people who are in urban beekeeping. If you have bees up in the chaparral up there in the mountains, it all depends on how much rain we have. Like this year's going to be a dry year, and if there's a drought up in the mountains, the chaparral plants don't bloom and you get zero honey. But down in the urban beekeeping, since there's artificial water going on all the time, there's plenty of plants. So we like urban beekeeping to produce honey because there's so much of it.
What are the potential health benefits of bee products like honey, propolis, royal jelly?
Honey, for example, what I use it for is instead of antibiotic, it's an antibiotic and it's an antifungal, so nothing grows in it. So actually it's very good for wounds. So if you have a cut, take a dab of raw honey. It should be raw. It shouldn't be the processed kind because that's been denatured. All the realness is taken out of it. And put it on your skin or on your cut and then cover it with a Band-Aid. And you'll notice that it heals a lot faster than the stuff that you can get from, what's it called, Bactine or Neosporin.
Yeah.
Right, I love it better than Neosporin. The other one, number 2, is propolis, which is the antibacterial secretions from trees. And the bees have figured it out that if they take it in their house and they plaster it all over like plaster, they keep the hive pretty well sterile. So human beings have figured out, well, if I chew this stuff, it'll help my sore throat. So you can now buy zinc and propolis lozenges in the health food store. That's number 2. Royal jelly is also a third one. Supposedly it's found in a lot of cosmetics and it helps supposedly keep the skin young. That's why everybody likes to look like a queen. And that's what the queen is given to help produce her. That's 3. And of course bee venom is a product which is used to desensitize people who are very sensitive to bee stings. I have a friend of mine who, if he got one bee sting, he's probably going to end up in the hospital. So he, at a young age, was given desensitization shots to help improve his chances of living so that he wouldn't have to deal with anaphylactic shock. And it actually worked for him. He's pretty happy that he went through those series of shots.
You talked about commercial honey, and you said raw honey, and they take all the realness out of it. What are the differences?
Honey is a real food. Honey has many different sugars, protein, carbohydrates, of course the sugars, ash contents and particles in it, but it's a real food. In other words, it's produced from a living plant, and it's processed by the bee in its honey stomach and added more enzymes to it. So it's a health food, basically. But when human beings take it and they want to produce runny honey, I call it, in the store, so that when you turn the jar up, it runs out, they have to filter it at high temperatures through a series of meshes. And so in order to do that, you have to liquefy it by heating it up and push it through to take all the foreign particles out so it won't crystallize and look like it's gone bad. So that's where we call it processed adulterated honey. Some people call it funny honey too, but funny honey is kind of one of the ones where you can actually take sugar water and just add food coloring to it and you call it honey. That's what it is known as funny honey. So you have funny honey that's runny.
All right, and if someone wants a hive around, there's a host-a-hive program.
Yeah, host-a-hive program, I started it last year where a person has a piece of property, but they don't want to become a beekeeper, so we call them a beehaver. So they supply the property, and we supply the talent, or the beekeeper, to match with the beehaver, who has a place for the hive, and then what we do is we just visit the hive, inspect it, and we share the honey with the people on the property. That's called the host-a-hive program. It's actually worked out quite well, but I'm looking for more people to do this. So any one of you can become a beekeeper, a beekeeper to help a beehaver. Yeah.
How does someone become a beekeeper?
How does someone become a beekeeper? Well, the one thing is to take a beekeeping class, like I give a basic beekeeping class. And once you take the 5-hour class, understand the dynamics about it, you order your kit from, there's 3 places, LA Honey Company, Dadant, and Man Lake, and then it's shipped to your house, and you can put it together yourself, or you can invite people over to help you put it together, and then you put the box on some piece of the property, south-facing supposedly, which is this direction, so that the bees can come and go by the sun, and then you find some bees. You can buy a package bee, you can get a swarm, you can divide a hive, and somebody can give you that, and after that, you're off and running, then you're a beekeeper, okay? And, it just changes your whole life after that. Never think the same.
Can you talk a little bit about pollen?
Pollen here. Yeah, pollen is interesting here. As we know, pollen is is like the sperm, so to speak, that travels from plant to plant. And I look at it like a little tiny egg. It's got a casing around it. Call it an exoskeleton if you want to call it exostructure. And inside it is the vital part of the pollen. Now, it has to be protected, so it has this casing around it. So the bees will collect it on the back of their legs, mix it with a little bit of nectar that they've collected, and it creates this little package called bee bread. They take this bee bread back to their hive, they dislocate it from the back of their leg, and they pass it on to some other bee, and this other bee then packs it into a cell. Okay, and then it continues to ferment. Well, the reason it has to ferment is because in order for the bee to take the vitals of the pollen, which it does use as like its protein, I call it the bee's steak, its meat, it will then have to ferment that pollen granules so that it can then feed it to itself to help then feed to other baby bees. So the question I have is, can we as human beings just take a regular piece of pollen that's not been fermented and can we digest it? I don't think we have the enzymes to do that, but still people think there's a benefit from eating pollen. Maybe just the outside part of the pollen, which of course can pick up a lot of pesticides too, so then you got that problem with that also. So that's one of the things they're dealing with these days, with pollinization of GMOs and all that.
And as a final question, has there been any major life lessons that you've learned from bees?
Wow, let me see, life lessons here. Yeah, bees got things figured out way more than we humans do. We're a young species on this planet. They are an old species, so they know what's going on. There's no sit-down strikes. They work for the good of the colony. There's no walkouts. And they just know how to regulate the population of their colonies so that they don't use up all their resources. So that's one thing I really give them credit to as far as being able to be good stewards of our planet. Us humans have got a long way to learn about it.